All right. Hi. It looks like people are seeing us and hearing us, which is great. Thank you so much, Chrissy. I am really happy that you've been able to join us this afternoon for this webinar presentation, Tips for a Successful Transition. We want to plan now for Smiles in September. Like Chrissy said, this is Blazejewski, the Education Director of the Massachusetts Down Syndrome Congress. And what this lunchtime webinar is designed to do is to give you some practical tips that will hopefully support your students or your children's transition to their upcoming grade in September. You know, I know that transitions are difficult for most of our kids, whether they're just moving from first to second grade or making a big jump going, you know, to middle school or to high school. And there are a couple of things that can be done to alleviate some of our students' anxieties. So if we think about, why are we planning this now? So it's May. The last thing we want to think about is September. We want to enjoy our summer and just sort of put school to rest for a little bit, but we really do want to be thinking about the transition piece now because there are a couple of high leverage, low energy strategies that can be done that will give our children the picture of what school is going to look like for them in September. So summer is really long, and you know, providing support now and making something tangible like a social story for your child goes a long way towards alleviating anxiety in August when, you know, you start to feel the clock ticking and, you know, every store you go to has back to school stuff and you're picking out backpacks. The work you do now will really support you at that time. Many of our students require the support for transitioning because they can't predict what the next year will be like based upon past experiences. So, you know, we sort of expect kids to go through this transition every year and be able to make a schema in their head of what it's going to look like when they go back to their first day of school in September. But a lot of kids really can't do that. And when they project what it's going to look like, there's sort of a blank, fuzzy ball there. They can't sort of make a plan in their head about what it's going to look like. And that's why a little bit of support now can go a long way towards building in that schema towards the end of the summer, which will support that transition. We also know that anxiety around transition can absolutely translate into behavioral dysregulation in the fall. You know, this happens for all kids. I mean, it's no surprise that you walk past any kindergarten or first grade class and there are children clinging to their parents because they just don't know what to expect, and they, you know, would rather be home with their moms and dads. And, behavior can be any kind of behavior. Sometimes it's just, you know, crying and feeling sad, but, you know, sometimes when kids feel frustrated or angry, it comes out in oppositional behaviors. And so this is one of the reasons where I think that, in my experience when I was an inclusion specialist, when we did this pre-planning around this transition, it did alleviate some of the anticipated behaviors in September. So this anticipatory support can greatly reduce these difficulties. So let's think about what factors, what do we need to know to start planning for transition? So ideally, transition planning is most successful if your school staff can identify the classroom teacher that your child will be going to the year after. When I was an inclusion specialist, myself and the other inclusion specialist would sit with the principal around the end of April and say, okay, I know we're planning classroom assignments internally, but there are a few kids that I need to have it set in stone because I need the parents to know who this teacher is going to be, I need the student to know who this teacher is going to be, and I need to start working with this upcoming year teacher to make sure that, you know, they get to know this student beforehand. And so in my school, my principal I worked with a couple of different principals. They all agreed that that was something we could do for just a small handful of students, the ones who would most need that preemptive information of who the teacher is going to be. It is something that one of the reasons why we didn't let all the kids know who the teacher was going to be the following year is because I worked in an urban setting, and we would have a lot of kids would move over the summer or, not enroll back, and the administration wanted the freedom to be able to switch class assignments to make more balanced classrooms if they needed to, and that was one of the reasons why they were reluctant to tell people who their teachers were going to be. But again, there are a few students that once their name is on a certain class roster, it needs to stay on the certain class roster. So that's a little bit of background into why some schools let you know who the teacher is going to be, and other schools are a little bit more reluctant to give that information. But if for some reason your school won't budge and they won't let you know who the classroom assignment is going to be, these tips can still be relevant and useful. It just takes a little, it's just going to be a little bit more broad and take a little bit more work. So there are two components to the types of things you need to be doing now with your student. The first thing you need to do is create a tangible product. You want to make a social story for your child that gives them a schema of what next year is going to look like for them. It's very easy to do. A social story we'll get into the details, but it can really be high-tech, low-tech, whatever you need to do that will give your child some information about what to expect when they come back to school in September. The other component is to build in some personal experiences now with the staff and the environment that your child is going to be transitioning to. So those two experiences together, those two components together really make for some successful transition planning. So the first thing we're going to talk about are the social stories. This one is a little bit more time intensive on the part of the parent if the school is not creating a social story. The main thing that you need to create a social story are pictures. Pictures, pictures, pictures. They say a picture paints 1,000 words, and it's true. So gathering the pictures is probably the most labor-intensive part of creating this social story. You want to make it personal. You want to be able to think about the elements that are going to be important for your individual child. And when you're making a social story, pick a format that's easy for you to create. The format itself is not as important as its accessibility. So some people are very high tech. I know that I've worked with some teachers who snap some pictures on their iPad and very easily, open up an app, throw those pictures in, and make a really nice social story based upon this app that they use all the time. I would recommend that you use whatever medium you're really comfortable using. My social stories were generally in BoardMaker or PowerPoint or even Microsoft Word. You could also take some construction paper and go to CVS and develop some pictures and use a magic marker to write the text. That would be fine as well. But the bottom line is that you want to make sure you have visuals and text that will give information about what school will look like when they come back in September. By the way, I want to encourage everyone to ask questions if they have any questions. Just type them right into the chat pane, and I'll make sure that I stop and answer them if I'm going too fast or if I'm not explaining something clearly enough. So if you're a parent and you need to gather pictures for a social story, how do you do it? I will say that when I think back to when I was first teaching and everything was very camera driven and you had to go get things developed, it was harder to upload things onto the computer. Things were a lot more effortful than they are now. With your smartphone or your tablet, you could snap pictures of anything, and there it is. It's a digital copy. It's so easy to email it, send it to someone, and send it to your computer where you're going to manipulate it and put it into whatever format you want. So again, everybody's walking around with the camera in their pocket and by their smartphone, and so it goes a long way towards the ease in gathering these pictures. So as a parent, how are you going to get these pictures? Depending on your relationship with the school, you can call your principal and say, hey, I'd love to come in and get some pictures to, prepare Sally for next September. Can I come in and just, meet with teachers to snap a couple of pictures? You arrange it with your principal or your special educator. If they're okay with that, you can certainly do that yourself. Some schools have a more open door policy. Some have a more closed door policy. If for some reason your school is a little bit reluctant to do that, you could ask the school staff to take those pictures themselves. So, and this also could be true if you're working and you don't really have the flexibility to get into school. If your child has a paraprofessional, you could say to them, hey, do you mind taking some pictures of certain things? And on the next slide, we'll talk about the elements that you want to gather in your pictures. But you could ask your special ed teacher, you could ask the paraprofessional just to snap some pictures and either text them to you or email them to you. The majority of your, I can't imagine any staff member not doing that. They might need a little bit of help, and they might need a few reminders and some nudging if you don't get them right away. But I'm sure that someone in your school would be happy to take those pictures and send them to you. So what kind of pictures do you want to include in your book? So it's really important to include pictures of staff. So if you do know who next year's classroom teacher is going to be, snap a quick picture of that upcoming classroom teacher. Snap a picture of the current classroom teacher. Even your paraprofessional, the special education teacher, speech, OT, PT, all of these different people, gym, music, art, even the nurse, the principal, or the secretary, all of these people could be used in your social story. You want to think about who are the people that your child is going to connect with the most, and you want to get those pictures. A few slides from now, I'm going to show you an example of a social story where you'll see where I used some of these pictures, and it should give you ideas about what to tell your school staff in terms of the pictures that you need, or to make your own list of the people that you want to capture pictures of. It would be great for you to get pictures of important areas in the new classroom. So if you are going into school and you're getting there 15 minutes before the students arrive, and you're walking into this new teacher's classroom to snap some pictures, have her show you some places of interest in the classroom, meeting areas. There might be a science corner or the reading corner. Some classrooms, I know one classroom I worked in had a cool down chair, which was a place that all the kids accessed when they just needed a little bit of a break. Cubbies and lockers are places that you might want to have a picture of as well. Also, there could be some places in the classroom that will be of particular interest to your child. So if they have a class pet, you might want to take a picture of that. If your child is really into the computer, you might want to take a picture of that. If there is an interesting picture that will appeal to your child, you might want to take a picture of that. In some ways, through your social story, you're marketing the upcoming grade and as many elements that you can include in your social story that's going to psych your kid up about going to this next grade and leaving what's comfortable and familiar and going someplace else, you definitely want to include in your social story. Also, you might want to get pictures of some important areas in the school, like the cafeteria or the playground or the library. Especially if it's a transition that's happening in the school, you you not only want to talk about what's new, you will also want to identify for your child what's going to be familiar as well. We're going to talk about this a little bit later on. So this looks like a long laundry list of pictures to gather. And so you don't need to make this a yearbook for your child. You don't have to include every single element. I gave this list because it includes all the elements that could be included based upon your child. But you really want to make it relevant and meaningful. If it's too long, they're going to check out. But if you kind of capture the things that you know are going to hook your child in, again, you're marketing the next grade. You're letting them know that this is going to be awesome when they go to second grade. And whatever you think you need to do to sell that to this child, you want to take pictures of. So if your child loves art, make sure that you snap a picture of the art room and say, oh, you'll still have art in second grade. If your child has to visit the nurse daily, you can snap a picture of the nurse and say, oh, you know, Nurse Smith is somebody that is going to help me every single day. It's just a way to give information for your child. So how do you put it together? Like I said earlier, PowerPoint is, for me, as someone who's not super high tech but not super low tech, PowerPoint's a happy medium for me. If Microsoft Word is where you go, I think you could make it a Word document, a social story app, a story builder app, or like I said, and I should have included it on here, you could even use construction paper and a glue stick to make your social story. So I'm going to go through a sample social story. We're also going to post this social story to our website. It will be a PowerPoint document. I want our members to be able to download this and use it as a template so you can customize it to meet your child's needs. So again, it's not something you have to use, but it might be a basic template for you to use as you're creating one for your child. So this is my niece Lily, and Lily is going to second grade. So I start the book, I pull a picture of her. You know, you might want to get a favorite picture of her, a picture of her doing something where she looks really excited. This was sort of the picture that I was able to access for this book. And most of the images I used in this book I actually found on Google Images. I didn't have permissions to go into her school and take actual pictures and post them online of different things in her individual class. So I was able to go on Google and get a lot of pictures. But it will give you an idea about the kinds of elements that you want included in your social story. So what's the title of the book? Lily is going to second grade. So you started off, again, with that marketing piece. In September, I'm going to be in second grade. Second grade is fun. And again, this is my little Google image of second grade rocks. You know, if you have a picture of your child kind of looking really excited, you could put that in there. You just want to put an image that sends the message that something awesome is going to be happening. Basic information. I will have a new teacher in second grade. Her name will be Mrs. Smith. She is excited that I will be in her class. Again, very basic information, but you're selling it. She's excited. She wants to meet you. It gets your child feeling really happy about what's going to be happening. Letting your child know that they're not the only ones who are going to be transitioning is important. A page like this, where you include your child with the group. All the first graders will be going to second graders. Some of my friends will be in my class. Again, most of you will not be able to let your child know who specifically will be in their class. Sometimes you get that information, but most of the time, you know, your child may be privy to the information of who their teacher is going to be, but the majority of the other kids won't have that information. But if you include your class picture, so all schools sort of have a class picture, you know, take a picture of it with your cell phone, make it digital, and put it up there, just to give the idea that there will be kids that I will know in my new class. All the first graders are going to be moving to second grade. It makes it a little bit less scary for kids. So tell a little bit about this class. Mrs. Smith's class is very cool. She has 2 pet turtles. Their names are Harry and Lulu. All the kids help take care of them. So again, it's building these pieces of schema for the child. They know what to anticipate. There's something to go see when they walk in this classroom. I want to see the turtles. I know their names. I know what kids do. They help take care of these pets. You might want to do this with the computer. Mrs. Smith's class is really cool. She has a computer. The kids get to play on the computer, you know, during break time or whatever. You want to add that little piece of information that you know is going to hook your child. Here's a picture of Mrs. Smith's meeting area. All classrooms have the basic same elements. So even if your child is moving from elementary school to middle school, in general, there will be elements that are going to be the same in every single school environment, and including those in your social story to activate in your child the reminders that, oh, you know what, I do know what this looks like. It might be different in some ways, but there are a lot of things that are going to be the same. So meeting area. All kids are used to a meeting area. If it's an upper elementary school classroom, even showing some desks. This is what the classroom will look like. I will be sitting in a desk. Even if your child is going to a classroom where there's going to be if they're going to middle school where they'll be working with more than one teacher, you might want to include several different classrooms. Here are a picture of some of my classrooms. It's just a way to put a visual in your child's mind of what to expect over the next year. Also, all classrooms have a book corner. In elementary school, a lot of times they make them more cozy than others. So here's a picture of Mrs. Smith's Books Corner. She has lots of books. She even has books about animals. Put animals if that's something your child is interested in. If your child's interested in fairies, say, I bet she has pictures about fairies. You could even send a book in with, to the teacher at the beginning of the year and say, hey, this is one of Sally's favorite books. Hey, could you include it on your bookshelf? You could do that to sort of support this and match your social story. But most classroom libraries are pretty extensive, so sort of pointing this out and giving your child a preview of something that they're interested in, that they can expect to see when they go to this classroom, will be really helpful to them. So you've sort of set the visual of what the classroom is going to look like and elements in the classroom. Now you can talk about what kind of things they're going to do in first grade. So again, this is just from Google Images. Google Images would be fine on a page like this. I will learn lots of things in second grade. All the kids will do reading, writing, and math. This is just like first grade. Again, you're marketing it and you're trying to alleviate anxiety. As many connections that you can make to what they already know is important. And as much as you can make things look like it's going to be really, really fun, no matter what, will also be important. If you can get this information, you can include some specific curriculum that your child will be learning about. So especially in science and social studies, in second grade, they learn about weather and, how plants grow. Just, again, going on Google and getting a couple of pictures to sort of talk about some things that might be exciting for your child that they're going to learn about is another way to sort of get them pumped up and ready for the next grade. In social studies, we will learn about how everybody's family is different and comes from different places. Not a great picture, very easy to find on the internet. You can just stick it on here. You don't have to, hunt the school for pictures of the curriculum. If you can, just find out from the principal what are some of the things that they cover in 5th grade or 6th grade, you can include some of these elements in your social story. Again, in this book, you want to be getting them excited about the next grade, but again, making connections to what they already know. Some things will be the same as first grade. This is a picture of the school. You'll still be going to Haley's school, right? Okay, so you can do whatever picture you want to put in there to kind of make that connection to what they already know. We will still have recess and lunch, and this is where when you make your list of pictures, you might want to include the cafeteria and the playground as images you want to include in your story. I will still go to library, gym, art, and music too. So this would be the page where, if you were to take a picture of the gym teacher or the art teacher and the music teacher and the librarian, you can just stick those pictures onto one single page. It doesn't have to be extensive, but it's a way to help your child connect to what they already know, which will alleviate their anxiety. Now this page could be customized depending on the specialist that your child will be working with. So I know that in my school, special educators and related service providers and oftentimes paraprofessionals would work with children for multiple grades. So where the classroom teacher might change, the special educator and the speech therapist and the OT or PT and even the paraprofessional might be the same. But again, including them on a single page, if you want to. You could make separate pages for all of them, but if they're familiar people, having them on here is just a way to say to your child, oh, who do you see in these pictures? Oh, yep, Mrs. Smith will be the same, Mrs. Jones will be the same. Just reminding them who they can expect to see that's a familiar face the following year. If your child has a special connection to their current teacher, to remind them that even though Mrs. Jones won't be my teacher anymore, I can go visit her and tell her all about second grade. Just letting them know that they will still have connections to these people that they may be close with right now. If you have a child who is going to have a lot of change in staff over the following year, when we talk about the first page where this is a new teacher, her name will be Mrs. Smith, she's excited I will be in her class, tell a little bit about her, and then you may want to, instead of talking about the curriculum that they're going to encounter, you may want to spend a little bit more time on talking about different important staff members that this child is going to be working with. So you don't want it to be too long. You don't want to overwhelm them with too much information. But reminding them about reading, writing, and math may be less relevant as telling them, another teacher who'll be working with me is Mrs. Blazejewski or Mrs. Aruda or whoever else might be working with your child. So again, we left off with Mrs. Jones. We're going to miss Mrs. Jones, but she will be, you can tell her all about second grade when you go visit her. And again, when you read this story with your child, you want to be upbeat, you want to be excited, you want to remind them how amazing this is going to be. And your final page is, again, it is going to be great. You're selling this. You are letting them know that this is going to be awesome. Even if you have anxiety about it, you want to sell it to your child and just be like, you wait and see how amazing this is going to be. That's just going to get your child pumped up and get them ready to go in and just sort of face it with a little bit of excitement rather than anxiety. So that's an example of a social story. Does anybody have any questions about the social story before we move on to the personal experiences component of transition planning? I hope it makes sense, and you had the and I we'll put a couple of different examples up on our website, but again, once you get the basic structure down, you just customize the text. It doesn't have to be very extensive, but it's, you print it out and you just read it several times with your child. You just keep reading it, and it will become really something that they internalize. So the other piece of transition planning for your child is to provide them with some personal experiences that introduce them to people that they're going to be working with, introduce them to the environment that they're going to be in over the next year. It's easy to begin to develop the relationship between your child and the new teacher now, especially if your transition is within the same building. The personal experiences do not have to be extensive or elaborate by any means. Your main goal is to just introduce the teacher and the student. So if your child is making a transition from first to second grade, it will be in the same building, which it's easier to provide multiple opportunities in short bursts for your child to meet the new person. I'm working with a 5th grader going to 6th grader next year. I'm working with a team who the child is transitioning to middle school. So there isn't as much daily opportunity for the student to sort of acclimate themselves to the environment the way you can do it if you're staying in the same building. However, your team should be building in at least one visit to the school. I would encourage you to send your child with a camera or their tablet to take their own pictures of things that seem interesting to them. You know, staff, teachers, you know, if your child gets the chance to make sort of a big visit to the new building, you really want to capitalize on that with recording as much in pictures as you can. You want them to meet these new teachers, get their names, and you can take it after the fact and make a social story about it, but it will be a little bit more extensive than what we're going to be talking about right now. So in an in-building transition, what are ways that we can build some personal experiences to the new people and environment that the student is going to be working with? So very easy things can be done. The student can go deliver a message to the classroom. I would have often sent children to a classroom with, you know, a folded, stapled piece of paper that really doesn't have an important message on it. You know, just something that gives the student a job and lets the receiving teacher know, like, oh, I'm going to make a big deal out of this student coming into my class. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to take a few minutes, thank them for delivering the note, maybe show them something in my classroom. It's a real low effort thing on the part of the sending and receiving teacher. It doesn't have to be a super long visit. It's just a quick, oh, Sally, nice to see you. I'm so glad you stopped down in my classroom. Hey, did you get a chance to check out our projects that our classroom did this year? Come on over. Let me show you the book reports that the kids did. Just a quick check-in, you know, building this personal relationship, letting the student know that you're going to get to know them, that you're someone who's welcoming, is important for teachers to do. So, you know, they can come down with a blank piece of paper, folded, deliver a message. If the student is on a break or transitioning from, you know, if the student is transitioning from like OT, going back to their classroom, they can always drop by. It's helpful if they drop by sometimes during a teacher prep time, again, to have that same kind of very quick interaction to say hi. You know, another drop-in would often happen before school, you know, as kids are coming off the bus or getting dropped off, peeking their head in this new teacher's classroom and giving them a piece of news. So if a child is coming off the bus, they could pop in to the new teacher and say, hi, I played baseball last night and I hit the ball. You know, it can take 2 minutes and the new teacher can say, oh, that's so great. Oh, I'm so glad that you came by and let me know that. Again, it's very, very low energy, but very high leverage. And the more opportunities that your child can have to pop in and talk to teachers, it's going to alleviate their anxiety when they become an actual student in this teacher's class. If for some reason you don't know who the next year's teacher is going to be, so for example, if you know your child is going to second grade, but the school won't commit to the specific classroom. Sometimes they might say, well, we know it's going to be between Mr. So-and-so and Ms. So-and-so. You know, you want to do equal opportunity drop-ins to both of those teachers, you know, so your child will sort of develop, your child, both of those teachers. It takes a little bit more time, and it's, you know, not the best model, but it is something that can be done. If you have to go visit all 4 classrooms, you can do that. And you could say, oh, let's go visit a second grade teacher. Who do you want to go see today? The majority of this happens. Most teachers have a really good idea of where a kid is going to. Sometimes they will not commit to the parents, but within the school itself, they often are 99% sure of where a child is going to end up in the classroom. And that's why, we'll talk about this after, when the staff is really entrusted to do this, they will most likely be doing these drop-ins with the right teacher, the one who your child is going to end up with, even if they don't really fill you in on that right away. You know, how else can this be done? So a student could spend a little bit more time with the teacher, you know, if it is during a prep time. You know, if a teacher is getting something ready in their class, they can say to the student, oh, I'm glad you stopped in. Would you like to water the plants with me? Or I'm putting these books away. Why don't you help me put these books on the shelf? Give them a little bit of a classroom job. It will just go a long way towards developing that relationship and making the student comfortable with the environment that they're going to be in the next year. If a teacher is really you know, if the upcoming teacher is going to run down to the office, she might pop in and say, hey, would Sally come take a walk with me while I go check my mailbox? That's something that can also happen. Probably a little less likely, but it's something that could happen to help develop that relationship. So, like I was saying, these are short but sweet encounters. None of these things need to take more than a few minutes at a time. They're something that just you want to develop into the routine towards the end of the year. You know, there are some more elaborate ideas that are very nice, and I know that some teachers take these on, but they're not necessary, and they're also much harder to execute. So the teacher invites a student to have lunch with them, or the teacher invites a student to come to the class for a special activity. So, you know, the second grade teacher might say, you know what, would you like to come have lunch with me today and we can get to know each other a little bit? Or, oh, my class is having an ice cream party. Why don't you pop by, you know, why don't you come by later on in the day and see, and you can have a little bit of ice cream. Again, it's definitely not necessary, but I have seen teachers sort of go the extra mile and do something like this, which is lovely, but it's absolutely not necessary. So a little related to what we talked about earlier, if you don't find out the teacher beforehand, you want to adapt the social story to include all the possibilities of a classroom teacher. So it'll start the same. So second grade is going to be awesome. I know that here are the second grade teachers. One of these teachers will be my teacher, and you could have a picture of the 3 or 4 second grade teacher on this page. You want to take pictures of all the classrooms and make things more general. Instead of Mrs. Smith's classroom, you can talk about, in second grade, we have a meeting area. In second grade, there will be a book corner. Because again, there are elements that you will find in every classroom, regardless of who the teacher is going to be. And you will also want to provide the student with the opportunities to do the relationship building with all the possible teachers that they are going to be working with. So this piece about the relationship building, I cannot stress enough how helpful paraprofessionals are in terms of actually making this happen. So the majority of our kids work with either a full-time paraprofessional or a part-time paraprofessional. And if you talk to your team, the current classroom teacher, the current special educator, if you talk to them about really making sure that this happens, the paraprofessional is a wonderful person to execute this, because and I'll admit this as a teacher who at this time of year you have wonderful intentions, however you get swamped with assessments and paperwork and last minute evaluations, and finding these little moments that work for this relationship building are best facilitated by the paraprofessional who can sort of really focus on this child and cut out the middleman and go directly to the upcoming teacher and say, hey, do you have any time today that would be helpful for us just to pop in? You know, the special ed teacher and the gen ed teacher can do the initial prep work and talk to the upcoming teacher and say, you know what, Sally's going to be in your class next year. We want to make the transition. We want to support her with the transition. We're going to be doing some visits. You know, if the paraprofessional can be the person to schedule it and execute it, it will be much, much more successful. For example, last year I know that, you know, you work on the transition piece and you come to school and you're thinking about a lot of different students, a lot of different components to the end of the year, and you might have a 15-minute block right before lunch where you want to do this transition piece. So you run down to the next year's teacher. You know, I went up to a 5th grade teacher and I popped in and she was deep in the middle of a math assessment. So that was my little tiny block of the day that I was available to do this relationship building, where the paraprofessional who's working for long chunks with this student can really prioritize when this is going to happen. They're often the one providing the movement breaks. When you're taking a walk, you pop in and the para can read, is this a good time to say hi? Is this not a good time to say hi? And he or she can be the one to sort of really build in this time. So I can't stress enough how helpful the paraprofessional can be in terms of making this happen. They're very easy strategies, but the majority of teachers days are absolutely filled to the brim with a lot of other things, you know, and scheduling it and making it happen is much more likely to be done with a paraprofessional. So I just want to put that in there, that paras are amazing for things. Paras are amazing for a lot of things, but this is something that a para is invaluable for. So one final thing that I would do to, again, build these relationships is to think about, okay, school is out, you're finally relaxed, you put the backpacks away, you know, wiping out the lunch boxes, and you want to think about what more can be done over the summer. You have your social story, your child has already, you know, had a chance to meet their teachers or see the classroom. You want to get the email or the contact information for the teacher who your child is going to be working with. And if you can connect with that teacher over the summer, every teacher spends some time in their classrooms preparing before school begins. Every teacher does, whether that's, you know, a couple of weeks in August or at another time. If you find out who the new teacher is, if you can just email them and ask them if you can just drop by the school at some point before school starts up again to check out the classroom, just sort of, you know, you can go in and bring the teacher a little bit of a muffin. You know, you can say, oh, you know, we're going to go visit your classroom right now. We're going to visit Mrs. Jones. Do you think we should pick her up a muffin and Dunkin' Donuts? You know, it can be really, really easy and short. All the visits that I've ever had with students are honestly never more than 10, 15 minutes. It's just a little bit of chit-chat, but it's helpful if it happens towards the end of August. Even if your school has any professional development days right before the kids start, that's oftentimes a good time to drop in if teachers don't have meetings the entire time. You know, you really want to ramp up reading the social story a lot of times before you make this visit, just to reactivate the information. But 99% of all teachers that I've ever worked with have been completely open to this kind of drop-in visit. And it's really nice for kids because teachers are a little bit more relaxed, it's a little bit more personal, and kids can kind of come in and check it out. check out their classroom. A lot of times their name is already on a desk or their name is taped to a cubby. That's a really nice thing for kids when they come in and see that they're already included even just with their name. I would encourage you to take, again, snap some pictures while you're there, just to remind your child, if it's on your phone, just take some pictures and be like, oh, do you want to show Grammy some pictures of your new classroom? As many opportunities that you can have for just sort of building those visuals and building those connections is going to be really helpful. So finally, good luck. So transitions are never an easy thing, and every parent should expect some bumps in the road because no matter how much prep work you do, your child is getting used to new people, they're getting used to a new teaching style, getting used to new routines, and that's hard for anyone. But hopefully this prep work will be easy for you to actually do and make things a little easier for you and your child as the year begins. So before we go, are there any questions that I can answer? All right. Well, you can always email me. My email is on the MDSC website. So if anybody has any additional questions, please email me. Over the next couple of days, I will be posting these sample social stories to our website. So I encourage you to check them out, download them if that's going to be helpful to you. Connect with your school and see if you can get some of these pictures and start putting it together. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to maybe seeing you at our next webinar. Take care. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.